Remember these? Of course not. And nobody does. But somewhere, sometime, someone got really excited about the idea of building a picnic table in your pants. And then they spent a huge amount of time and effort and money on this idea, only to later realize that when they took it to market, that it was solving a problem that nobody was interested in. It never got any traction, hence the picnic pants pattern. The world is littered with the results of the picnic pants pattern. Even big companies make this mistake over and over, like Microsoft with the Zoom, which lost $289 million in just one quarter because it didn't land with its audience. And I see 99% of course creators making their own version of the picnic pants. They get an idea, then they spend a long time working on that idea in isolation without getting any feedback from those who matter, their potential audience. And sadly, when they finally do go to market, they're blindsided because instead of the flurry of sales and interest, they face the rude shock that they missed the mark completely. So just imagine that for a moment. All that time and energy and focus wasted, and you lose out on the massive opportunity that's right here at your fingertips to channel some of this $200, billion a year industry into your pockets. So I call my solution to this the beta test process, and it's super duper simple. You simply start looping in the people around you before you create your product, and you get their reaction first, whether on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, on email, anywhere you have those connections. And you just start talking about the big problem that you solve in a specific way. You simply share a few details about that problem you're solving with your course, along with your product mission, your future self vision, and your bird's eye view. And I'll be talking about those things in just a minute. And because you're talking directly with them one-on-one, you're going to know right away if the idea excites them. And if you get enough interest, you just ask them if they want to buy right then and right there. And if you're solving the right problem, some people are going to say yes right away. And this is the most powerful evidence that you can ever get that people want what you're about to create. Wouldn't you say? Because people will always say what they think you want to hear until it comes to money. But when people are actually willing to pay you, then you know it's the real deal. People don't buy information. And for years, we've been led to believe that our main value is in our content and our information by well-meaning experts and gurus, by people selling courses on how to make courses. And we've been following the model of the big information marketers of the 1980s, like Tony Robbins and Zig Ziglar and Jay Abraham, from back before the days information went online, when it was literally a package like this one that arrived, right? It was basically just a package that arrived in your mailbox. And the equation was the more content you had, the better, because the more pages and pieces, the bigger the thud it made landing on someone's doorstep. And the bigger the thud, the bigger the perceived value it had for them. All right. See, that's a pretty big thud it can make, right? And the equation was essentially more thud equals more value. And the crazy thing is that this idea from the 1980s has actually led all of us down the road of stuffing our courses with an overwhelming amount of content. And up until now, this has actually been the gold standard model for creating courses over the last 40 years. But the truth is that these days, your customers can find most of this information online for free because YouTube and Google are basically these giant rivers of free content. So your value isn't in the volume of content you give to people. Your value is only whether you can get the specific result that you provide. Because remember, people don't pay for information, they pay for the transformation. When's the last time you bought an online product, a program, or course that gave you such a simple, easy mission to focus on? A mission that was so clear that you knew exactly where the finish line was. You knew exactly what winning looked like. So go ahead and think about it. You probably can't think of many examples because most info products out there try to give you the kitchen sink, the Library of Congress. And here's an example from masterclass.com. And this is a company that has absolutely beautiful production and is advertising pretty much everywhere. You may have seen them on Facebook, but their trainings have absolutely no completable mission. So take this. Chris Hadfield teaches space exploration. All right, you buy it. How do you know when you've crossed that finish line? Go ahead. I'm going to wait. The only one I can think of is actually going to space, right? And here's another course from, one of the most gifted gymnasts of all time, Simone Biles. And her course is Gymnastics Fundamentals. So how the bleep do you know when you've crossed that finish line? When you've got guns like hers? Or maybe you're standing on that Olympic podium with a medal around your neck? These courses are completely missionless. And I think the only reason they seem to be everywhere is that they're cheap and have big name teachers and all the thud you want for just $15 a month. Now, masterclass.com can afford to do this because unlike you and I, they've got millions of dollars in venture capital funding to blow on ads. So they don't need to worry about making money now. But if you're a solopreneur like me without that kind of funding to invest, then I recommend a more focused approach. So let's compare the masterclass.com approach with the mission I created for our 12-week group coaching and training program, the Experience Product Masterclass, or EPM. So your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to design, launch, and profit from an experience product in 12 weeks or less. So you can get off the marketing treadmill, make more sales, and have more impact. Now, can you see how this mission gives you a simple and crystal clear idea of exactly what you'll do, when you'll do it, and how to find that finish line? You know you've won when you've launched your experience product and you've made your first sale. Now, if you compare that with the masterclass.com trainings that give you no clue how to find the finish line or how to know when you've crossed it, that's why that's pretty much the main reason why 97% of people give up somewhere along the way. They don't know what winning looks like. So there's no reason to keep going when the going gets tough. And learning or doing something new always gets challenging at some point. And this is a powerful idea straight from the world of apps and games, where every little thing that you do, every button press, every action, every power up, every enemy you defeat, every action, it's like rewarded in some way. It could be rewarded with an animation, with earning bonus points, a sound effect, a color, or a combination of all these things. And as a player, this kind of constant positive feedback, it makes you feel like you're making forward progress, like you're achieving something. And this is why the more you play, the more you get addicted. And apps and games are sneaky. Have you ever noticed that they always make the very few first wins super duper easy? So no matter who you are, you can win. So think about it. If the first level of an app or game beat you, you'd be so much less likely to want to continue, right? But instead, they give you a super easy win to make you feel like you're just naturally talented. And then they move on right to the next win, which is a little bit harder, maybe just by a couple percent, but enough to be noticeable. But you can probably still win. And the simple cycle just continues. So each task is slightly harder than the last, but there's always a win waiting for you afterward. You take action, you get better, you win. You take action, you get better, and you win again. And that's like pushing the dopamine button over and over again. So the reward center in your brain just stays lit. You can take constant wins to the next level by making it possible for your students to earn points every time they take action. And we call these experience points, or XPs. Now, many games use XPs, so they might sound familiar to you. And more online courses and learning management systems are now adding gamification to make it possible for you to add these micro rewards and constant wins for your clients and your students. So let me give you an example from Jono Bacon's group coaching course. Jono came to us with 24 years of experience building communities one-on-one for hundreds of brands, but he couldn't figure out how to deliver his experience one-to-many in an online course. He felt like all the existing platforms out there underserved his course and his students. And when he discovered the experience formula, he realized he finally had the tools to build a group program that could take his expertise out of the corporate world and into the hands of entrepreneurs across an even broader range of industries and needs. So the first time out of the gate, he had 30 students sign up, and they loved getting experience points and unlocking additional rewards. So here's what happens in Jono's Community Experience Masterclass membership site when someone completes an action. As you can see, when they check off an action, They instantly receive points and see a cool animation. We get a sound effect. So we recommend making constant wins as multi-sensory as you possibly can. In the way you can make constant wins multi-sensory is by reinforcing each win in 4 different ways. And that's kind of like pushing the dopamine button 4 times in a row. So we recommend reinforcing these wins kinesthetically since they're physically checking off a box. Then visually, as you see the checkbox appear, and watch your XP counter tick upwards. Then audibly, as you hear the cha-ching sound, and yes, people do get seriously addicted to hearing these sounds, and there are dozens of sounds to choose from. So for example, if you have a softer topic, you can use a sound like singing bowls, really anything that you want. And finally, emotionally, as you feel a growing satisfaction of having made progress towards something worthwhile, whether it's launching your online course, losing 20 pounds, or anything else. Obviously, life isn't a video game, and none of us are starting fresh with 0 points. Your customers have past experiences and failures that color how they approach your program. And if you don't acknowledge, label, and address those fears, doubts, and concerns on the journey from mission to mission accomplished, then chances are good that they'll take themselves out of the game before they see results. So before I first discovered the experience formula in 2016, this was happening to most of my students too. In fact, I watched the vast majority of my students struggle, hit internal resistance, disengage, and give up. And when I talked with my colleagues and peers, they were seeing the same thing happening in their business too. And a lot of them blamed the problem on their students. They said, if people really wanted success, they just do it. And while there's some truth in that, I still feel deeply conflicted about marketing and selling programs that didn't consistently deliver real transformation. So, in an industry where the average failure rate hovers at over 90%, I honestly don't think the entire problem lies with the student. And while we can't take responsibility for their success, we do need to be responsible to them. So, core experience number 6 isn't actually an app or game secret. It comes from the worlds of adult learning theory, behavioral design, and the psychology of motivation. And this is how the experience formula goes beyond gamification to create lasting success. This is where you prepare your students, clients, and customers for the challenges they're going to face when they set down the road from mission to mission accomplished. So they're prepared for the freakouts and not blindsided by them. And I'm not talking about some measly little paragraph in your welcome email reminding them if things get hard to just hang in there. I'm talking about a consistent and constant focus on where your students' heads might be at each stage of their journey toward mission accomplished. Because according to most mainstream psychological theory, we're actually so attached to our past actions and our current identity that when we're faced with this choice to take action that could change things, we've got this internal, are you sure freak out moment. Now, even if it could change things for the better, and that's actually where the famous scared of success theory comes from. It's neither good nor bad. It's just our brain trying to keep us nice and safe, keeping our reality the same today as it was yesterday, because that's working out just fine, right? I mean, we're still alive, we're still breathing, we're still here. So for each and every step in your program, ask yourself, what are the challenges someone might have as they take this action? What do they need to believe about themselves to be able to take this action? What fears or self doubts could kick in as they do what you're asking them to do? And you take all of this and you deal with them inside your program. So, one quick last tip before we move on. In addition to finding and supporting students who are struggling, I also recommend rewarding your top students too and cheering them on and encouraging them to keep going. And because we track student activity points in our system, We're able to post weekly leaderboards to recognize our top students and let them know how they're doing and where they are in the running for our grand prize. And at the end of the 12 weeks of the program, the student with the most points wins a ticket to a $5,000 in-person workshop with me. And that's a huge value, and it's incredibly motivating to students who've just spent 12 weeks being trained by me. It's super exciting, and the more competitive students actually compete to see who can win the grand prize. And many platforms allow you to check student progress through your course. So even if you're not tracking points like we do, you should still be able to get a report on who's taking action and find a way to recognize them either publicly or privately. So is it worth it? You tell me. In Jennifer's story, it's not a one-off. We have over 1,000 pages of testimonials and success stories for EPM over at experienceproductmasterclassreviews.com. So you heard me right. Over 1,000 pages of testimonials for a single program. And hundreds of those students have invested with us again and again because they felt like we really cared about their success. So as you can see, focusing on student success really pays off in the long run. Millions of dollars in extra revenue for a couple hundred emails and texts and phone calls, not to mention their success too. I would do it just for my students' success. Now, I wouldn't build a course in this economy without seriously focusing on student success. It's the best investment you can make right now. That's why it's your real job number one. And without it, you have no business. I always like to say that the fastest way to get people to the bottom of your funnel is to get them to the top of the mountain in whatever they buy from you. The big mistake entrepreneurs make, especially in the early stages of building their business, is to try and choose the perfect forever tools and implement their entire tech infrastructure for the next 5 to 10 years right out of the gate. But that never works because no matter how perfect your plan is, as they say, no plan survives contact with the enemy. And as your business grows, your tech needs are constantly going to change and evolve along with it. And what you need today could change dramatically by tomorrow. Not to mention that technology is changing all the time too. So I encourage you to get only the minimum viable tech that you need today and then solve tomorrow's problems tomorrow. Once you've clarified what you're really doing and what you really need, otherwise you could end up creating technology for a picnic pants product, right? So try to solve tomorrow's problems now. When you try to do that, will not just overwhelm you, it's going to get in the way of launching your product and making money, which is the most valuable thing you can do right now.